See what happens. Well, the internet says we're live, so I hope that
Yeah,
means we are officially live.
we are.
Welcome, gentlemen. It's great to see your faces again after spending 4 days straight with you last weekend. Obviously, anyone who watching this, whether you're watching live or watching back, just want to say thanks for joining us tonight. We're going to be talking about the Grand Clash Grand Tournament that was in Quebec, a small town north of Montreal, kind of in between the three major cities in Quebec. So we hiked over there from Ontario to take part, and this is the biggest event in Canada for AOS to date. So a lot of fun for us. But just some quick introductions. I'll start off. Obviously, you know my face too much if you watch the channel. But yeah, I'm Jordan. Obviously, for that weekend, I was playing my Idoneth Deepkin. This is last kind of 2.0 event for us. I was playing a mixed list in Dom Hain, so great at killing monsters and rerolling ones in the charge. We'll get into talk a little bit more about all our lists and stuff as we go through the game. I'll just do a quick overview. It's just very balanced list for me. 2 Ishleyan units of 3, 2 Morsar units of 3, a unit of 2 sharks, and then a single shark with the net, and a turtle, and an Eidolon, and Volturno. So a little sprinkling of all the fun toys while you can, getting the last use out of everything, like Volturnos' stacking command abilities and the abusive boats and all that fun stuff. And, running the battalion, so I was 3-drop as well. But we will be going through all our games. Before we do, I'll just let everyone else introduce themselves and do a quick rundown of their lists. Ridge, do you want to kick off next?
Sounds good. Yeah. So everyone knows me probably as the Seraphon and Skaven guy on the channel. I played a little bit of Nurgle, I think, and some other slaves. I got a couple other things, but yeah, I was playing Seraphon, so it was kind of the last kick at the can for 2.0. Just playing Fangs. So what everyone's been seeing, the filth for over the last year over year, TPS.
Yeah.
I don't play generally the 2 or 3 block to 40, so I was just running a 10, 10, 40 for skinks, 3 Sallies, and then a unit of 15 camos. And then it was New Croak, so Kragnos wasn't in play, so it was the New Croak, Ashleth Bear, Skink Priest, and Star Priest. So pretty similar to what most people do, and then Bound Geminids and extra CPV. So I was 1940, so going for the Triumph Heavy, which it was insane how many times it was just amazing because I reroll wounds like 3 of my 6 games. So as you know, on the Skinks, it was just really good, and Mortals in addition. And then reroll hits is good for the Sallies and the Camos. But yeah, so it was the Seraphon is kind of insane. So it was, I don't know. I'm excited for the new edition. So we'll see, getting rid of the 3-pack of Sallies and the 40 Skinks, and it's still going to be, I think, really, really good. But one more time with just the pure filth. So it was fun.
Nice.
I think that's probably a good segue for me, Reg, because I also brought the filth. I mean, yeah. I think we all did, but so I was running kind of some of the hot daughters meta. So Marathi, Shadow Queen, and Kane, and then the Hag Queen on Cauldron, and this is all under Hagnar. The Hag Queen had the Iron Circlet for the reroll in the after save, and then I had a Bloodrack Medusa as my general, and then with Mirror Dance as the spell for teleporting my characters around. I had 2 units of 10 witches, a unit of 15 of the bow snakes, and then 2 units of shadow stalkers, and then a unit of 10 of the life takers. So that was it, and it was 2,000 points on the nose. And I'll hand it off to Carl.
I forgot the
Triumph. So I haven't been on the channel for quite a bit of time, but my name is Carl. You've probably seen me play KO predominantly, some Skaven as well. For the Grand Clash, I took Caradron Overlords, but I took a little bit of an off-meta, well, as off-meta as you can get with KO. I didn't have Spell Portal, or Spell in the Bottle, and instead went with 3 small heroes, 30 arcanauts, 2 gun haulers, the ironclad, and a whole host of artifacts. Most notably the phosphorite bomblets with those 2 up mortal wounds to try to take some of the big monsters down. So yeah, that was kind of my list. All in Zilfin, of course, because you can't get away from that in 2.0. So
Yeah.
You were like the only one that didn't have Warp Lightning Vortex.
Yeah.
And Zilfin. I had like 4 or 5 in my room or something.
There's like 11 or 12 Zilfin lists in that whole tournament, and I'm the only one. And actually, one of my opponents said my list was soft, so it kind of hurt me.
Oh.
It hurt me real bad. And I just want to say I am anti-hat meta here, so the chat is calling it out as the only one not wearing a hat.
3-1, so
yeah.
You're at the disadvantage. But actually, just talking about this, like we've all said, we are all playing, hot, really strong armies, really strong lists. Going there, having not had events for a year, we were going in looking to, smash each other and have some, good hard-nosed games. And obviously, we'll get into our games, but it's worth saying that everybody else kind of went in with the same mentality, it seems like, or a good majority of the people. They were, over in mid 90s in terms of players at the event, and all 6 of my games, I was playing someone with a really strong list who was a really good player. Really, seemed like a lot of people showed up to play and showed up to win, but doing it with the right mentality of playing good, clean games and have great opponents and all that. But we'll get into kind of all that stuff. Carl, do you want to kick us off first, talking about your round 1 game?
Sure. So round 1, so it was a 6-round tournament. Just to kind of talk about how the scoring was done. In terms of primary, there was a differential. If you beat your opponent by 14 points, you got a 12-0. They went with kill points as well. So at the top end, if you killed a difference of 1,201 points, it was a 4-0 going to a 3-1 and a 2-2. And then there was 2 chosen auxiliaries for each and every battle plan. And you scored 2 points for scoring them and 2 points for denying your opponent. So it led to some incredibly close games in terms of differential, nickel and diming your opponent, trying to get as the differential as close as possible in order to score as many tournament points. So first round we played shifting objective. Out of the 6 battle plans that we were playing during the tournament, there was 2 that I was most worried about with my KO. One was shifting objective round 1, and the second was places of arcane power in round 5 because I only had 3 heroes. So I played a gentleman named Guillaume Berger. I think I'm saying that right. It might be completely wrong. But he actually won the Best Painted Award in the tournament. So he had an incredibly beautiful non-metallic metal Skaven army. So he did non-metallic metal for 100 and some odd models like a crazy man.
Oh, man.
And his list basically boiled down to the biggest threats was a 40 block of Storm Vermin, a whole whack load of weapons teams, Rattling Guns and Doomfire throwers, and Thankful with 4 Warpfire throwers. And so looking at his list, as a KO player, you always identify the weakness of it. And the weakness of his list was not having a CP. And so I attempted to try to alpha him as hard as possible, to remove some of those key units. And the first round, I was able to kill all 40 Storm Vermin and put a dent in the Clan Rat units. And then the Skaven kind of hotness kind of came out. The Rattling Guns, all of them shot, with the overpower maybe 16 to 20 times each one with the 2 damage, and so started decimating my army. And it's gonna be a running theme, but the first priority role for KO is so big. Whether you take first or you take second, if you win that, you have a good chance of winning. If you lose that, you can still claw a victory, but because of how volatile the army is, if you don't win that first priority role, you're kind of on the back foot. And so my opponent ended up doubling me, started gaining more and more ground. We kept it fairly close. So at the end of the game, It was 13 for my opponent, Guillaume, and I scored 7 points. So I kept it fairly close in terms of differential. I scored some of the secondaries, and the kill points, basically the only thing that was left on the whole table was my Navigator on my side and Thankful on his side. So it was an incredibly brutal game, just shooting like crazy. His weapons team started blowing up in turn 4 and 5, but I wanted it to be a little bit earlier. But those weapons teams at 65 points now for AOS 3 and 60 points in AOS 2 is insane with the rerolls to hit from an Arch Warlock and 2 damage apiece is
love it.
so good. And he even said like in Quebec they play a heavy meta, and so like a quite a hard meta, and based on the amount of KO players that we had over there, he was well prepared. He actually, the big thing, deployed his Storm Vermin right in front of his army, asked me to shoot his Storm Vermin, baited me into throwing everything into it, and he deployed the weapons teams not hidden within his units, and so I couldn't kill the Storm Vermin and the weapons teams at the same time. So he was incredibly smart in having that dynamic in his army. And so I just lost the first game of the tournament, and it was a submarine time after that.
Nice. Well, for me, again, shifting objectives. This was game 1, playing my Identity Deepkin. I'm similarly was worried about shifting objectives with my list, because it's one, if a tanky army gets on it, like Ridge we experienced in one of our games on the channel, it's hard. It can be hard for IDK to shift it in time to store enough. So game 1, I matched up against Sons of Behemoth, against a guy named JC, and while this is they are a big tanky army, so it's kind of what I feared. They're all monsters, and in this matchup with Dom Hain, I reroll all wounds against monsters. So I was on a 3-up rerolling ones to hit, and then a 2-up rerolling all for wounds. If I wasn't in my aura, I still did all the rerolls. So huge advantage to me there. But for my game, I just knew against scoring was going to be so big on that mission. So I took first, jumped on the 3 objectives, stored with Battle Line, and so got some early points, and basically had to. I got those points early, and then as soon as JC moved all the gardens on the objectives, I was just trying to clear one objective a turn. With my Deepkin, and he was only doing it like hitting the defensive Ishlayan guards, so they're pretty hard for gardens to chew through, ignoring the rend. So pretty favorable matchup for me there. The only precarious thing I felt was going to be the mission, but the way it played out, I was able to clear an objective and kind of cascade down to the next one. I didn't win a priority, or I probably could have sealed the game earlier. Yeah. But in the end, I still, bottom of turn 4, finished off the last Guardian.
Battle line, so you still help him with the battle line as well, all that. But
yeah. So, and actually noteworthy that the big Mega Guardians weren't battle line in 2.0. Yeah. So he wasn't scoring as much as he potentially would be in 3.0. So that was a benefit. But I think by the end of the game, I got all the big guys off the board, and was able to score enough points. I think it was a decent lead just because of the last turn, but we were probably pretty close to being tied in score going into round 5.
Yeah. Should we talk quick just about the scoring system? Is that something we should have maybe done at the beginning?
Oh, I went through it.
Yeah, Carl went over that.
Fell asleep.
Okay.
But basically,
was not paying attention.
Yeah. Again, if you missed it, it's a kind of a tiered scoring system where, depending on how close your game was, the major win would get you between 6 and 12 points. So if you smash your opponent by, I think Carl said it was 14 points, then you would get the full 12. But if it was like only a 1-point victory, it might be like 7-6 or whatever it is, works out to be.
Yeah. You want to win
7-5.
by a lot, essentially.
Yeah.
Win by a lot, and then kill points as well.
Exactly, and then with kill points.
Or if you lost, lose by less.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So it's good because it does reward you for playing a close game or keeping a game close, which I like. And one thing Deepkin struggles with is they win games, but not necessarily excel at the secondaries and smashing opponents because you have to trade a lot with Deepkin. So this game was it was pretty close. I think it was a 14-6 for me, the final score, but again got the win, so that was the most important thing. So unlike Carl, I had a fortuitous matchup.
Going up.
Yeah, exactly. But again, going into monsters when your whole army rerolls wounds against them, was feeling pretty good in that one.
Yep. Nice. So yeah, my game, my room was just full of KO Barak Dilfin and Zinch Archeon pretty much. So it was, I had a good feeling I was going to play one of them. And sure enough, I did. So my first matchup was KO Barak Dilfin. It was Gabriel Sampson. He's actually a premium member, so it was super cool. Right away, just knowing Season of War, we chatted a bunch, about just whatever the channel and whatnot. So that was cool. So yeah, Gab was an awesome guy. So he had he was running a similar list to what Carl does, but he had the 20 Thunderers that pop out of the boat, Warp Lightning Vortex, way less drops. Obviously, I'm a million drops being Seraphon, Fangs. So yeah, we rolled off, and I rolled a 5 because you don't get to pick where your temple is. So right away, the terrain wasn't too much big terrain, so I was kind of scared. And then he rolled a 6, so I didn't get my temple. So I was just, trying to mitigate the Warp Lightning Vortex because I know it's coming. I know he's going first. Shifting objectives, yeah. So he ended up taking first. The Warp Lightning Vortex didn't do a crazy amount, like he didn't roll 6s or anything like that. But then I actually was able to put Croak into cover as well, so he's still able to get Lookout Sir, which is fixed now for 3.0. But 2.0, you're playing with all the, the cheese you can get. Yeah. So I had him -1 to hit and +1 save. So I was, with 5 guard. So pretty confident that if he goes at Croak, he's either going to waste a ton of shooting, and then I'm going to roll that 3d6 and he won't die, and then I can hit back. So I backlined my 40 block, my 3 Sallies, both my Skink Heroes, and just from the kind of doing the math. So in the hero phase, he did some damage to the Source Guard, and then he pulled out the Thunderers, all 20 in front of the boat, shot everything at Croak, wiped out the guard, and then after it was all said and done, the end of the shooting phase, he did 9 wounds to Croak. So this was my first time rolling the 3d6 for Croak to see if he survives or whatever. And then I actually rolled the 11 exactly. So I needed to roll an 11 plus with 3d6, which is average, right? Like it goes. So Croak went down immediately. So my tournament was just I wanted to go obviously 6-0 or 5-1 or top 10. Like that's what we're all trying to kind of do here. So that happened. I had a good turn back. I teleported my Sallies, brought down my Camels. They killed the Ironclad. Just positioned pretty well that if I would have got priority, that I definitely still had a chance. He dropped his Arcanauts on all points, so he was getting extra battle line, as he should. Like, he was a great player. So, yeah, and then we rolled priority after I killed the boat, and then he won priority. He rolled a 6 again, I think. So, yeah, at that point, like Carl said, with KO, it's
so volatile.
Yeah, so if you win, that turn 2 priority for Seraphon KO, they're both are such damaged volatile armies that it was just so important. So he won that, finished off the Sallies, and my Skinks I charged. They were all already into Thunderers, which I didn't do enough. So end of the day, he ended up, it was pretty much called after turn 2, but we played for our secondaries, obviously. I was able to kill the Navigator, so I got a secondary from Headhunter, I think it was. But yeah, so I think it ended up being 16-4. So ended up doing the same thing as Carl, the heavy submarine, but the rest of it ended up working out. But yeah, it's good.
Yeah, so for my first game, I was in. It was really funny actually. We all seemed to get in rooms that had a different theme. Like I guess Reg, you had the heavy KO themed room. I was also looped in with the rest of the dock players. There were 4 other dock players. Somehow I managed to avoid the mirror match, or maybe that's something that BCP helps avoid. But so I played Corn, in my first game. Person by the name of Joshua Samuel, I believe. And super nice guy. It was his fourth or fifth time playing AOS, like fourth or fifth game, and was jumped straight into like heavy competitive tournament scene. So I know it was like probably a lot for him, but he played very well. I think the scenario was a bit hard for him though, because he was running 3 Bloodthirsters, and with shifting objectives and them having to move up to the center, it really exposes the Bloodthirsters to my bow snakes, which can kind of sit back in their own deployment zone, stay away from the objectives, and then as soon as he gets on it to score, just blast them off. So it did go the full 5 rounds, but by the end of the 5, ended up cleaning him off the table. So it was a strong start for Daughters of Cain with a 20-0 to begin with.
Nice.
There you go.
Yeah, so was feeling good after the first game, and maybe should I just jump into the second one right away?
Well, we'll go through. We'll let Carl. We'll keep the order.
We'll go back to Carl.
Get
But
Great.
I guess it's just worth pointing out the trend here of the elf armies at this point. Both won their games.
And it's not just that as well, because we shared rooms, and Ridge and I shared a room, and Ollie and Jordan shared a room. So there's also that.
Yeah. There's a bit of competition kind of grew in there, but yeah.
And before we moved on, the first night was all poutine for all 4 of us.
That's very true.
Fantastic poutine.
At the Devil's Hole.
The Devil's Hole, yeah.
Shout out to Frederick too for getting us those juice and shots.
Oh yeah.
Randomly look over like, where'd these come from?
That was awesome.
Very nice.
The whole crew.
Him and Nick, that was great.
Yeah. So I'll jump into the second game. So the second game was Total Conquest. I played Flesh Eater Court. That was 2 Terrageists, Royal Mordants. He went with a more heavy horror kind of list with 6 horrors instead of the traditional 6 flayers, but kind of standard, like 30 ghouls, that sort of thing. And so I knew as KO I had a massive advantage. I just backboard edged my my boats and my army, gave him first turn. He moved up, tried to score as much, and then I went for kind of a home run play where I dropped my boat, was able to shoot 1 Terrageist off. I ran my Engine Master within 6 inches of a Terrageist, and I unleash Phosphorite Bomblets, and just proceeded to just roll 2 ups. I ended up rolling 27 2-ups to kill a Terrageist.
27 mortal wounds.
Mortal wounds, yeah, to kill a Terrageist right off the bat.
And you made him sit there through all of the 2-ups, not just till he was.
I mean, he was still saving. I was like 2 up, and he's like, okay, 6 up. I was like 2 up, 6 up. So we were doing it. And after losing two Terrageists, it's incredibly difficult to come back, especially against KO. And so I just bounced around. And so he was an incredibly nice guy. And we ended it with a 20-0. So I went from sort of kind of losing, not too bad, and then 20-0. So I kind of rocketed up in the standings a little bit after that. So
that helped, turning around the day.
Yeah, you seemed happier when we chatted after game 2. Carl has always done his games because he's playing KO, so he's done his game so early. And we were in the same room day 2, so he was always over at my table within 20 minutes or an hour.
I was running around getting the team water, or running around.
Just checking up on everyone.
Yeah, just checking up on everyone.
Yeah, your KO had been so volatile. Your games were pretty quick a lot of time, and you're so efficient as a player. I know the army really well.
Yeah.
For me, my game 2, we actually had a huge break. We had lunch after game 1, so we had a huge break going into game 2. And we were trying to, when we were looking at matchups, I'm like, there's 2 matchups I had. I think it was like KO or a Deepkin mirror match. And the Deepkin player was a friend of mine, Pierre Luc. who I chat with about Deepkin, and I'm like, I do not want to play his list. So he had 3 turtles. I have photos of his stuff up on Twitter. Beautiful army, but ended up getting paired into Pierre Luc in the Deepkin mirror match. So this was on Total Conquest. But again, I always want Deepkin not have to play the mirror match because I just want all the KO, us to feed on all the KO players and Seraphon players, all the shooters. So they're dead enough easy having to having some of the Deepkin players knock each other out. But going into the game, I did feel like I had an advantage with my list. We had a lot of similar things, same sub-faction in Domhain. He had 3 defensive eels, 3 turtles, an Achillean king, and I think that, and the Eidolon. So a lot of the same pieces, Cloud of Midnight in both our armies. The advantages I felt I had going into that were faster because the turtles only move 10, and I had sharks and Morsar Guard that are hammers that could move 14. So I had the speed, I had the net, which was an advantage on one of the sharks, and then the battalion making me a 3-drop, and then also knowing that the Deepkin mirror match really could come down to potentially to the turn 3 priority because one army attacks before the other person's. I do have Volturnos compared to his Achillean king, so I was in a better position to take advantage of that. And the way it went, the kind of early turns, we just kind of just did a little swirl around on the objectives. Just neither of us really committed too hard. But he went first. I gave him first turn, and he played reserved. I took the objectives kind of in response, and then he came to try to push me off of them. But again, being able to spread out a little more, I was able to pivot and pick off some of his kind of defensive units a little faster. And then bottom of round 2, I was positioned where, again, knowing turn 3 priority was big, I positioned all my offensive stuff where I'm like, with my 14-inch movement, if I get the turn, I will be in 6-inch charges for all my stuff. But if he gets the turn, it's going to be 10-inch charges for him.
The turtles are slower, yeah.
Exactly. So really was positioned to take advantage of that. But then I did end up winning the turn 3 priority, so obviously took it, stacked 3 or 4 attacks on a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think I at the time I only took out like 1 turtle and some of the guard, but it did let me use the net to pile in and tag a different turtle, so that guy that was already locked up. And then I had a single eel or something just floating in the middle of the board that was going to be getting in the way of all his stuff counterattacking me, which thankfully, just with winning that turn 3 priority, I kind of got to set up exactly how I wanted, negate his damage. He did get into my 2 sharks, which I had in cover, and with the +1 save aura from the turtle, and with like +3 or 4 attacks each. So he ended up throwing the Eidolon into them, and the Eidolon barely did any damage because of the +2 to save, and snapping back the turtles or the sharks almost killed it. And then the same thing with one of the turtles, went into them the next turn because he won priority at top of 4, and I still had the plus attacks on everything. So the kind of, again, was able to use those tools that I had in my list compared to like an eel spam or even the turtle, multiple turtle build. I have so many tools compared, with Deepkin, using all the different options. So very flexible, I find, rather than kind of doubling down on one aspect. So definitely, I felt it went to my advantage, but ended up relatively close game. I think it was like a 15-5 or something, but did get the major win there. So, Deepkin won. Thankfully, it was mine.
Yeah, at the end of the day, Deepkin won.
Yeah.
Yeah, my second game was to Brochu. So it was a Big Wa, or no, not Big Wa, it was Bone Splitters. And there were a few of these Bone Splitters lists that are just a billion wounds. So, just you have to deal with trying to get through it or, figure out your plan where you're going to go. So I
Hey,
didn't
Rich.
realize. Yeah, I was just gonna say, Carl, I didn't realize that bone splitters. I asked Carl about ice bone, so I'm like, Carl, what does ice bone do? I haven't played bone splitters. So he tells me what ice bone does, like the morals and sixes, blah blah. But I just didn't realize that they can pick 5 units to pregame move, like both like 5 inches or whatever, and that's just a bone splitters thing, not an ice bone. So Carl didn't tell me that because I didn't like. So it was funny, but yeah. So he moved his 5 inches up pre-move, just kind of shoved all 30 savage orcs, 20 more boy orcs or whatever, and another unit of 20 of them, 2 units of pigs, like the 5 more boys or the boar boys. Sorry. Essentially, he got up, got on the points, just kind of waited for me to see what I was going to do. I just overloaded one side, and I wasn't able to kill. He had, I think 2 war docs and like 5 heroes. So normally I want to kill the heroes and then make them with orcs. But I was rolling ones for my D3s. I just wasn't able to kill the heroes. I know it's a sad day for Seraphon when Pro can't just kill all the heroes. But anyways, so I kind of overloaded one side, killed as many as I could there, and then lost priority. So he kind of got into my home objective. Essentially, the moral of the story at the end of the day, we took a bit of time because just obviously moving so many models, Seraphon has so many things in so many phases. So I think we were end of 3. We finished to turn 4, but I came back after turn 2 and was able to clear off the one side and just the unconditioned teleport. And I was able to clear off my own side. It ended up being, I think, 15-5 or something like that because I was able to get my secondary. But one thing that I've talked with Jordan and everyone was like, this tournament was a dice down. So it was after, say, you finished turn 4. Even if I had cleared off every model that he had, I would only score what I scored up to till the end of turn 4.
If you hit time.
Yeah, because I hit time. So even though in turn 5 I clearly would have scored all 4 objectives, I would have got that many more points. Which in this system that would have allowed me to win by more points. So I would have got more in the 12-0 category. So as this one, I think it was like 9-3 or something like that, or 8-4. Where if I would have scored all 4 at the end in turn 5, I would have probably got the 12. So it would have been a 19-1 or 18-2. So it ended up being like a 15. So that happened in a few games. Just like I said, so many wounds, tons of models, and just a lot of things to do. But yeah, it was awesome. It was a good opponent. So I came out with the win. So I was back to 1-1, and looking whatever to finish off the day strong.
Nice.
So my second game, I played Julian and his Big Wall list. Ridge later played him as well later in the tournament.
Yeah.
It was really awesome guy. Such a fun opponent to play against. And he was running the Rogue Idol, or Idol of Mork, which is a fun model. I hadn't played against it before, so I was trying to figure out the tech. And I think it's a helpful point. Like, if I had played this tournament by myself, not like kind of with the team of the guys here, I wouldn't have had kind of the same insight about the tech and the buffs and how that kind of all works. So Carl was telling me, okay, yeah, what's going to happen is they're going to put all the buffs on the Rogue Idol, and then he's going to be able to move the 20 inches and then charge into you with like a 2-up save and doing all the damage in the entire world. Top of its attack profile, 10 attacks at 3 or 4 damage. Wild. Anyway, with all this prep and I made sure I kind of screened myself out very, very well, except for one little small area, my bow snakes, which he immediately took advantage of, and sure enough, put every single buff on the Rogue Idol, moved it in the hero phase, and then flew it over top of my entire army and landed right in the back, just behind my bow snakes. And so got that in turn 1 and was able to clear off 5 bow snakes, which seemed good, but actually the challenge of it was that he should have killed a lot more. Like, really, like, he had a lot of buffs, and I don't think he rolled very well at the start in terms of number of damage, but then later it would seem like it was all for the big wall player at this point because he was in my back lines with his big damage causing unit and tying me down, not allowing the bow snakes to shoot off any of his other characters while he was moving. He had 2 units of 30 Savage Orcs, one with bows and another one with the spears. So one-on-one objective, the other one coming to try and take my home objectives. So that's a ton of wounds to chew through. So 120 between the 2 units.
Yeah.
So I almost failed the DPS checks, but after that, my bow snakes ended up with being in that bubble of Hagnar. I'm having a 4-up save for them, and then a 5-up after save, and then re-rolling my 5-up after that because of the prayer. So they became supremely resilient, and he didn't end up actually causing any more damage really to that bow snakes. I had lost maybe 2 or 3 other snakes the whole time after his rogue idol continuously trying to attack that unit.
He's
as
out of
opposed
buff
to
range
getting
too. So
he's out of buff range at that point.
Yeah.
And the rogue idol actually brackets fairly significantly on its profile. So it'll be an interesting one in 3.0 with the ability to maybe use a CP and to put the monster down to the top to fight on top bracket, but outside of buff range and in that scenario wasn't able to do the output. And so then the bow snakes went to work, finished him off, and I was able to clear off the other objectives in the pigs with Marathi. So ended up being another strong win for Daughters, finishing up 18-2. So this time I was sitting pretty good with 38 points so far after 2 games.
Nice. You're among the top at that point.
At that point, yeah.
Because it's the match secret score was 20 a game, so you were 2 off top, match score.
Yeah. I just wanted to point out as well. I don't think we mentioned it. Because of COVID, we had to split the field into 4 rooms, and they were all named after gods. And so each of us were in different rooms at that point. So there was no chance of us meeting each other on day 1. And basically, based on how you did on day 1, you would be repaired into rooms in day 2. Yeah. Just to point that out for the people.
Which was awesome, so that we didn't have to play each other day 1. Day 2 comes up, but
it was also kind of sad not seeing you guys. I mean, I kept running around.
Yeah.
Like
you saw us the whole time.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. It's just like. Yeah.
Yep. Cool. Well, game 3, last game of day 1. Carl?
Yeah, so I'll kick us off. So I played Kevin Wardrop, who's a gentleman that we see in our local area sometimes. He's up in Barrie, which is a few hours away from where we usually play. And he was rocking the Night Haunt. So he had 30 Gringbass Reapers, 20 Blade Geist Revenants, and 40 Chain Rasps, and I think 9 Spirit Hosts with a smattering of small heroes. So I was incredibly worried about this matchup. We were playing it on Forcing the Hand because of his ethereal nature. It's incredibly dicey in terms of the match. If he makes his 4-up saves or his 5-up saves, I don't have as many mortals to do in order to push past that ethereal save. And so basically what ended up happening was he positioned where his heroes were vulnerable to a turn 1. And now this is where my list kind of fell down a little bit. If I had Warp Lightning Vortex, I think that amount of mortal wounds that is generated from that spell alone, I don't like it because of its kind of unreliable nature. You have to roll the 4-ups or the 3-ups to do those D3 mortal wounds. So I didn't end up taking it to this tournament. But I did miss it in this Night Haunt matchup. But after turn 1, I was able to kill a significant number of his heroes. The only one that was left was the Dreadblade Harrow. And then I started trying to chew through his units. I was able to kill 20 Grimghast Reapers as well in the first turn. And so I was in a commanding position. But Kevin kind of just held on, started to grind me. The big thing was his Blade Geist Revenants deep struck the bottom of turn 1, rolled that nice 10-inch charge with Night Haunt, ended up fighting twice into my Ironclad. because of how the triumph of reroll saves work, it only occurs for that phase and not for multiple phases. And since Night Haunt fight at the end of the charge phase, then fight at the combat phase, I only had reroll saves for one of those phases. And so the Ironclad ended up living, but with 3 wounds or so. And then here's where KO's volatility begins again, in that the turn 1 to 2 priority, if I was able to get it, I can heal the boat and perhaps fly it away into a more safer position. But what ended up happening was he won. He ended up retreating his Blade Geist Revenants. I think Sid's in the back there. He ended up retreating his Blade Geist Revenants and then rolling another 10-inch charge.
Love that.
Which was crazy. Ended up taking down the boat, and then with a pylon and attack again, he took out some of the Thunderers, and I was at that point in the back foot. And basically, we kept playing, but because of the early lead that I was able to jump out at the start, and fly high and teleporting, that sort of thing, Kevin and I ended up in a 10-10 draw. But his Blade Geist Revenants, I think I calculated it. I think it killed something like 1,400 points of my army, just 20 Blade Geist Revenants. Nothing else in this army did any damage. It's just that one unit. And it's that, again, that Night Haunt 10+ inch charge. You can't rely on it, but when it goes off, it is really devastating, and you can kill any army.
We got to get Jordan's brother Alex to roll those 10 pluses when he's playing Night Haunt. He seems to never get lucky.
Never roll those 10 ups. Yeah. And Kevin was telling me that his previous 2 games he didn't roll any 10 ups, and then it just light bulb just flashed
saving them
in our game. Yeah. But yeah, 10-10. So I ended up day 1 as 1 win, 1 draw, and 1 loss. So
good balance.
Yeah, very balanced, but I was incredibly sad.
For me, game 3, so forcing the hand, I was playing against a guy named Tony with his Zinch, Eternal Conflagration or Conflagration. So if you watched probably one of the last 2.0 battle reports on the channel, I played my Deepkin against Alex with literally the exact same list on the channel, and if you've watched that, you know how that went. Funny enough, though, so Tony had watched that game on the channel, so follower of the channel, which is really cool. But he came into that knowing, regardless, that was a really tough matchup for him. I obviously counter the shooting, and just again have the huge advantage there. But I will say, to his credit, with the mission, again, forcing hand, forces you to spread it a little bit, which actually was a little tougher for me, because it's, again, with only 2, units that I want to get shot, and then maybe a backup of the Eidolon. It's a lot of ground to cover, and especially with a potential teleport. Now, it's pros and cons whether it's actually worth doing, but kind of always something you have to be concerned about. He actually really pushed that game a lot closer, and it made it a lot tougher than that matchup should have been. So it was a huge credit to Tony and how well he played that matchup. I think he gave me first and then doubled me 1 into 2, which let him try to chew through some of my screens, get into my sharks and some things, because again, having to spread out, I didn't have double layers of screens everywhere. I had to cover so much ground. I had just pretty much had a single layer, and when you put all your Zinch stuff on one flank, he was just focusing fire down one side and barely cleared my screen turn 1, or I think he even didn't. There was 1-ish lane left or something, but he cleared that with magic, and then got into again, I think it was my sharks were the big hit. But in the end, Deepkin doing what Deepkin does, bottom of 2.
Shooting.
Yeah, again, control shooting, but bottom of 2, I got in, I killed a unit of flamers. I killed, 1, I don't remember if he had 1 or 2 exalted. I was chewing down a bunch of the horrors, and so that went well. and then he won priority into 3 and was able to teleport, move some of his firing power, and hit some more of my hammers from the side. But bottom of 3 came, and I'm able to like kill his Lord of Change, clean up a bunch of the other heroes, and at that point, I think into turn 4 it was decided, and we were just kind of working through the last things. But again, he had me really scared actually. Just again with how spread out you have to be on that mission, it put me in a tough spot, and he played made no mistakes and played exceptionally well. Just the matchup obviously was hugely in my favor, which is why I love Deepkin. So I feel like they're never out of a matchup.
Yeah, that's awesome for him.
Yeah,
playing that well, like that is a tough matchup. Yeah, for sure.
So played it really well. Again, I think it was like probably a 14-6 or 16-4, somewhere in that range. So I won my 3 games day 1, but none of them were like huge blowout victories or anything. And again, like we said, we know in the end for final rankings, that's very important. It's how much you win by, because tiebreakers and all that when you have so many players. But yeah, good challenging game. 3 good games, 3 great opponents day 1, but managed to go undefeated and for day 1. So I was obviously happy with that.
Big time. Yeah, so my game 3 was, Zach would love it. It was a bunch of Stonehorns and a mercenary giant, actually, I think, or an allied giant, whatever, in Boulderhead. So I played I played ogres a bunch, so I had a good idea. Enforcing the hand is just so good for Seraphon, just being able to summon skinks, teleport them in the back. My opponent's name was Dominique, some guy, super funny. Was obviously this tournament was in Quebec, so a lot of it was depending on how well the English was, or what I mean, you could usually always figure everything out, and like we chatted about a bunch, like the Quebec meta is just so good. Like all the players are so good, everyone's hard nosed, you know what I mean, like everything about on rules, like, so all the games were so good. But yeah, he ended up he gave me first, and then I just kind of moved up, just scored. I ended up teleporting my unit to 10 screens, just right on his front 2 objectives. So I think I scored all but 1, turn 1, and then just kind of positioned some 10 more skinks, and it was just a lot of just throwing screens up, and then him charging at me with the Stonehorns. So it ended up being a close game, but by the end of it, I eventually took the giant down. He charged everything into me, and then he just wasn't able to keep things for his back objectives because he only had 5 units, and then by the end of it, it was down to 2 or 3 units. So I was able to just late game teleport skinks at the back, and I kept Croak and kept everyone alive pretty much the whole game. So yeah, again, it was a close game, so I think it was again one of those 15-5 kind of things. So yeah, like for these tournaments, you need to be getting 20-0s, 19-1s, to be even at 5-1, or if you do go 6-0, obviously you're going to be near the top. But a lot of it is 2 kill points and beating your opponent many points. So I didn't. Yeah, it was a good game. Everything I could ask for, kept it close. I think if I would have won one of the priorities, I would have been able to kill some of the Stormers quicker, but just wasn't able to. Just that's kind of the luck of the draw type of thing. So happy, obviously, to still go 2-1 at the end of day 1. So in a good position to have a good Sunday. I was just pumped to go get a poutine and have a couple of beers and have fun in Quebec, because it's the first time we've been out and been able to kind of do that thing and have a long here in Canada. So it was, it's awesome.
Yeah, it was going out each night was definitely like a super highlight. It was just lovely. It was the first time we actually seen like live bands or something, because everything's finally starting to open up here. So I played Patrick East in my 3rd game. Patrick was running Fangs of Sotek, and we were joking around because I call him Quebec Ridge, because not only was his list very similar to Ridge's, but they also had a very cool, similar star theme with the blue and the pink on the bases and everything. So really well painted army. It was fun to play against, and
he took out the tournament.
think-
Yeah, he ended up winning. Yeah.
Yeah.
Won the whole show.
Yeah, and I think a weird thing as well that we were identifying with some of the Seraphon lists and Ridge was Razor Dawns was a big theme. Like,
yeah, and they came up in the game too. Like, I mean, and Carl, you were going to say like it's a big theme because there was not just one of this list, right?
Yeah, a lot of the lists were fairly similar.
40. There were 40 skinks, 3 Razor Dawns, Croak, 10 guard. Like it's definitely two Star Priests, I think 2 Skink Priests, but yeah, obviously a great list. But Razor Dawns for sure. Like we in TTS and in Ontario meta, Salamanders.
We've never seen them.
No, and they're amazing because they can shoot when you charge them. They can shoot when the Razor Dawns charge you. It's just D6 shots, not 2D6, but still you can give them the same Star Priest buffs. Like, and then in combat,
they hit in combat.
They slap hard. Yeah, man, they're 3/3 minus 2 D3, same as
two damage, 2 flat.
Or 2, or yeah, that's right, 2 damage.
2 flat.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, Elliot.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Okay.
so so Patrick, I think, was a bit afraid of the bow snakes, and I mean snacks, bow snacks, and maybe rightfully so, but it deployed pretty conservatively with his whole army in kind of the back quarter, definitely trying to protect Croak and not have any chance that he was up for shooting. But the result was that I pushed up early and teleported both my Knight Shadow Stalkers up and ran Marathi into one of the middle objectives. So I scored 8 points in my first turn and had kind of pinned him to the back of the board. And even though he could do some teleporting, the way I had kind of spaced it out with like layers of my army and the witches like in between, there wasn't really anywhere that he could come in and teleport even to get behind me that would allow him to get onto the objectives. So I was up in a great position scoring wise and zoning wise against a Seraphon army that I probably typically would not have board control over. So that put me in a really strong position. So I took start of turn 1, won the priority going into turn 2, and scored another kind of 4 points, just held some board control. Didn't really get many spells off or anything because playing against Seraphon, that's not really going to happen. But Marathi wasn't taking like too many wounds. But I did have to throw her Shadow Queen form into his big unit of 40 skinks. And so it was looking pretty good for daughters until it got to turn 3 when I decided to kind of get cocky at that point. And as I got, I won the hero phase, and I knew I was up by quite a bit on points at this point. I was up 12-6 or so. So I was like, okay, I'm in a good position for points. I haven't really lost that much other than my screens. And I did get my Mirror Dance spell off, and it was the only spell I got off like that whole game so far. And so I put both my general, who's the Bloodrack Medusa, Bloodrack Shrine, and then also the Hagon Cauldron on the left flank to try and clear out a 40 block of skanks. My thought was that the Bloodrack Medusa, she can actually do a ton of damage with her shooting attack because it's every model within 12 inches on a 5+, it's a mortal wound. But putting both those units into the skanks, at that point, I didn't actually need to kill those bodies. Claim that point, I could have just pushed out and egged out a victory. And both those 2 units give a lot of defensive buffs in terms of pluses to save and mortal protection to the big unit of bow snakes, which was sitting back on my home objective. So I put them up on that side. They ran to the skanks. They killed a few, but they got killed in return. So then I was down my 2 buffing heroes, and now Marathi was killed in the bottom of turn 3 too, so that I had no heroes left in the game, and my army is very fragile after those 2 go down. So the Razor Dawns ran into combat and obliterated the bow snakes, and the game went downhill from there. but I was able to claw out 6 points out of the 20. So that was that put me in an okay position, despite losing to Pat, who perfectly capitalized on my mistake after he realized
Yeah,
that had
and
happened.
late game too. Like it's just crazy. Seraphon are so good turn 4, turn 5.
So good.
So if you can keep your hammers, if you can keep those skinks or those razor runs alive, then they're gonna make you pay for that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Nice. Day
That was
one's
that.
over.
So day one's over. 2-1. Was happy with it.
Yeah. And I think after day one, they split us, repaired us. So I believe Jordan and Ollie were both in the top room of Kragnos, and then me and Ridge decided to form our own team because we were the top of the second room, the ceilings of Sigmar. That's what we kept calling ourselves. So yeah. So Ridge and I were in the second room, and Ollie and Jordan were in the first room.
Which might have paid off because it's always that thing. Like you're either going to all the top tables or you're playing this like submarine style where exactly we were playing the 25th to 50th placed people. So
Yeah.
in tournaments where it's just based on points,
battle points,
and not just 20-0 for getting the win. It could be not like obviously a strategy, but dropping points here and there
Could work in your favor.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah.
So.
But it was still a long shot for us to crack the top 5 or the podium at that point. So we ended up going to the same place, I think, right? Devil's Hole for the end of day
There's
one.
A trend starting.
And so the start of day 2 started with focal points. And with KO on focal points, not having any monsters hurts, but the Ironclad is a behemoth. And because of its base size, it can touch 2 objectives. Now, it can't capture both objectives, but the way that the battle plan is worded, you just need to be within 6 inches of the objective, and so you can score additional points for those objectives.
Yeah.
But I didn't do any of that because I was playing the same exact guy that Jordan was playing in the end of day 1, Anthony, with his Zinch Flamer list, and so I was sitting there going, I don't know what I'm gonna do. And he basically had a choice because of Change Host 1-drop, and he ended up giving me the turn, which I think was the play of the game, the biggest mistake that he could have done. Based on how volatile my army is and how volatile his army is, and the battle plan with focal points, it's would it be called lengthwise or widthwise?
Deploy on the long edge.
Yeah, deploying on the long edge as opposed to deploying on the short edge. Yeah. The deployment zone was very, very shallow, and so even him placing his hammer units touching the back of the board, I was able to aggress and shoot some of the big pieces. After turn 1, the Lord of Change was dead. The Fate Master was dead. And when those 2 pieces go down in the Zinch Flamer list, it's incredibly difficult for them to come back. I was able to kill an Exalted Flamer too. And my list only has at most 10 models. And so when he played his turn, he attempted to shoot the Flamers into the Thunderers within the boat, ended up doing 0 damage, and then he won the double. But at that point, he didn't think that he could come back. And as well, I was able to kill 1 unit of 10 pinks, and so at the end of my turn 1, he had 10 pinks left, 6 flamers and 6 flamers, and his first turn did 0 damage to me, and so we ended up calling it there.
Woohoo, KO! So fun.
Yeah, it was a 15-minute game, which sometimes does happen in tournaments. And based on how my list is and how his list is, the battle plan kind of dictated how the game was going to go. Now, if it was corners where you would deploy on like kind of in table squares, and he had a deeper deployment where he can hide his heroes now it would be a different story because he can teleport out of that castle and start trying to chew me up. But when it's just deploying on the long wise edge and you have short deployment zones, it's pretty much over.
Mainly just the chicken. Like you need to keep that chicken alive.
Yeah, and he was -1 to hit. You know.
Yeah.
I forced him to use all his fate dice, so I was holding back the ironclad. So I shot the Thunderers first with -1. It's a 5-up save for the Lord of Change. He had a 5, 5, and a 6, and he ended up using all 3 of those to try to stop the damage that was coming in because it was something like 10 damage from the Thunderers. And so
we were still in turn 1. I remember when Carl came over. My opponent was still in turn 1, and he came over and like, what's up, man? I'm done. It's like, what?
Yeah, so it ended up being a 19-1 for me because one of the auxiliary objectives was cornered, and having shot off his heroes right off the get-go meant that I wasn't able to score that. But it was a very good showing. But like I said, and Anthony and I were talking in terms of scenarios. If it was a corner deployment or short edges where it's a deeper deployment zone and you can backboard edge those heroes, then he has more of a chance.
Those matchups, those things are gonna happen.
Yeah.
You talked about it, like
there's some missions in armies you hope not to face, and depending on the mission you're playing in the matchup, it can skew one way or the other.
Now, if he took first and pushed up, then there could have maybe been more of a game. But with an army like KO, you're scared of taking first turn because the double turn will end up with the same result.
Yeah.
Yepper.
Nice. Well, for me, so going into day 2, I got matched up against Ben. Ben was playing Daughters of Cain. He was playing, straight out of 2019, like 90 witches. Yeah, 90 witches. Which again on a close mission like that is kind of scary, because it can be hard to chew through them. But I realized, in that matchup, I'm definitely getting choice of first turn because I drop him with my 3-drop, and he did not have a command point in his list. So
Jordan's done this trick to me a few times.
Bring your command points, kids. Yeah. Always have your command points.
Well, it doesn't matter anymore at 3.0, but
having choice, I'm like, okay, you expect the Daughters of Cain player 330 blocks. He's gonna put the 3 blocks on the line, and if he does, I'm gonna went into this kind of expecting this. I'm gonna take first. I'm going to shoot 3 wounds off Marathi to get her started early. And I'm going to hit 2 of the blocks of 30, try and force 2 big battle shocks and get rid of both blocks. And also use the net to limit the hits back from one of the units. So I'm only taking hits, I'm taking very few hits. So basically, that's exactly what I did. He did put the 30 blocks forward. Those are also his screens, right? You don't have any other screening units when you have that many bodies. Yeah. So they were on the line. It was 18-inch deployment because of focal points. So it was kind of the best mission to face that on. So I took first, moved to this kind of center of the board with generally my whole army, leaving my Morsar Guard just tagging the back objectives, my own. And then I pushed up a unit of defensive eels and a unit of 2 sharks into the center unit and the one on my left flank. It's again with the kind of poor saves of witches. I knew Ishlayan, despite being swingy, had the potential to do 12, 14 wounds, which again was going to force a battle shock in combination with shooting. So the turn was pretty successful. I did got the wounds off Marathi. The defensive eels that went in, they got hit back because I had hit the net into the middle unit. So the defensive eels got hit back, but again, 2 up unreadable save. They were perfectly fine. Maybe a couple wounds, or maybe one guy died. But they flubbed on their attacks, so it didn't actually end up forcing a battle shock on that left unit. But my sharks went into the middle unit again after he had to activate. So it let my sharks pile in. They took maybe a wound or 2 turn 1, and they killed 16 or 18 witches. and another, so I think he had 4 left in that unit after battle shock. So again, just because the CP, it let me
Ouch.
take out double, the damage I'm doing. So not quite, didn't get to hit both units like that, which is what I was hoping, but at least taking the one, it meant he's not even moving out of his deployment zone turn 1. He's just charging those units, which is, again, what happened. He did get Marathi actually in a little pocket through her forward and onto my back objective, but again, my eels, defensive eels, or sorry, even my offensive eels were on a 2-up, and Marathi with can be a little swingy, so she didn't clear that unit, didn't take the objective, and I don't remember if I won priority or not. I don't think I did, but at that point, I just had such an advantage, and it took him, I think those 2 turns, it took him 2 turns to try and clear through my just first 2 units that I had thrown in, and the whole time they're on a 2-up or 3-up save. They're hitting back because there's so many combats that I'm, the sharks are chewing through the other unit of witches, and Marathi is not, able to clear that unit of Morsar Guard on her own. So she can be swingy, so that lucky there, because she can also be swingy the opposite way and could have cleared them the first turn. So I did, that was fortunate, but come turn 2, turn 3, I am able to then bring in the rest of my power and double down on 2 units, and then the next turn double down on the other 2 units, and I think by the end of 3, I had tabled the army, and I had taken a bunch of hits and a bunch of damage back, but he didn't actually, I had a bunch of like single eels left in different units, which means I don't give up the kill points in that.
Yeah, that's huge.
So just the pace of the game and the strategy and not having the CP all kind of went in my favor. And again, the tools of having the net to reduce the pile in lets me play differently and tie units up and not give my opponent many options. So again, just kind of went in my favor. The game plan. It's one of those games where everything kind of goes perfectly to plan, which is what you always hope for. But I mean, besides turn 1, I could have battle shocked some more witches. There's really happy. Nothing really. No surprises for me, fortunately. So that ended up being my first kind of big win. I think it was a 19-1. But again, like everyone we've talked about, Ben was an awesome opponent, a ton of fun. We were laughing the whole time. He actually is a store owner, I think, in the Ottawa or Gatineau region.
Cool.
So yeah, he was a lot of fun to play. Would love to, like all these guys, hope to see these guys at events in the future. And fortunately, I again, the matchup, no CP there was huge in my favor, and being able to take first.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, hopefully they all come down to Red Harvest and come to Ontario to play some tournaments. Like we've said it a million times, but the meta there is definitely real. Like a lot of good players, good lists. Crazy.
And so fun too.
Yeah, everyone. Oh yeah, it's just smiling and just awesome. So my game 3 was actually against Oliver played, who was Julia and Saez, and I think Saez, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but it was my closest and best game for sure of the tournament, and it was like for sure like a very experienced player, played Big Wa for a long time. He knows kind of how they work, what they do. So I do as well. So for teams, I actually played Big Wa like an Erdfist list, so I have a good idea of it as well. So it was good to just to have. It's always nice knowing about the army you're playing, because then you can kind of strategize a little more. So same thing. He had the rogue idol in the middle. He screened everything out with his orcs as he should. I left my 2 10s, the screens, and the skinks in the front. I couldn't completely backboard because it doesn't matter. That rogue idol's moving 20 inches, and then another 10. And if he gets Breath of Gork Morkov, which just in my head, I'm like, I have Croak, +2 to unbind. I should be able to unbind it, but of course I don't. So I unbind a couple other spells, but he gets off Gorka Morka, gives it +1 damage, moves it to 20-inch Mighty Destroyers. So obviously, he took first. He cleared out my screen, but after he cleared out my screen, I guess it didn't matter. He forgot to move the Rogue Idol in the movement phase, so he moved it 20-inch outside 3 of my screen. So I think it ended up being like a 7-inch charge. So he had enough WA points to have +1. So he made the 7-inch charge. So he got into my Source Guard and Ashulith Bear, but my 40, and my Skinks were there as well. But I have a CP. So I used Parting Shot, shot at the Rogue Idol, rolled the 4+, and then I was able to retreat them away. So then when he piled in with the Rogue Idol, he wiped out the 10 wounds of Source Guard, took the Ashulith Bear to 2 or 3 wounds. So then when I piled back in with the Ashulith Bear, he had the Serpent God Dagger, as everyone knows, is the super fun. If you put a wound through, which even on this one, like there's you can put a wound through. Put the 1 wound through. So I had a 1 die roll. If I rolled a 5+, I would have killed his fully wounded Rogue Idol. So we were both like laughing, like giddy about it. Like I took a bit of like walked around, rolled a 4. So close to slaying the Rogue Idol with that would have been just epic. And he said too, he's like, oh, that would have been amazing if you did that. But anyway, so yeah, after that, bottom of my turn, I actually put the Rogue Idol down to 1 wound. I think I had him down to 1 wound left. Like I pulled my Salamanders over, fully shot there, dropped down my Skinks. Kind of, at that point, I was like, I abandoned that whole left side, so I just took over the whole right side. And then, yeah, just killed as many of the Arrow Boys as I can because I don't have great saves. The Arrow Boys at 18-inch range can actually do a lot of work. No Rend, but there's a lot of attacks. So I took them down as best I could. I didn't win Prio, so his which would have been so nice, but his Rogue Idol that was on 1 wound, somehow I 3 Salamanders, did all the shooting, did everything, just on 1 wound, was able to kill 9 of my handlers. He positioned, move everything kind of up. And then bottom of 2, I proceeded to take the right side. So I took all the middle point and focal point and his back point, put all my Skinks. I kind of avoided his 6 pigs and Mega Boss and other stuff on the left. And then obviously in the bottom of 2, I was able to kill the Rogue Idol. Yeah. And then I won, which was big. I won the turn 3 Prio. So I doubled 2 to 3. So then I was able to finish off the 30 block in the middle. I think there was like 4 or 5. And then I killed, shot and fully charged my 40 Skinks into his back point. So, and then I was able to summon 10 Skinks, screen out Croak. I did a really, really, really nice play with the Geminids. So I was able to position them in such a way that the pigs, which we know in 2.0, like endless spells are almost
can't move through.
Yeah, they're better just to literally block. So I was able to put like just enough so his pig couldn't get through from both of my Geminids. And then he was able to Mighty Destroyers and move, and he ended up actually making the charge at the end of the day at the bottom of 3. But so it was one of those crazy games that was so tight. And then I won turn 4 Prio and was able to just kill the pigs. I had 2 different screens, so if he would have won that, it would have been close. Like, yeah, we would have obviously it would went down to see who actually won. But I won that, so then I was able to kill the pigs. I did actually a cheeky play, teleported Croak over to the other point where his pigs were my back left point, and then summon on 10 Skinks onto his top left point. So I was able to score both of those in the middle, and actually all of them. So yeah, I only won. It was a super close game, but yeah, at the end of the day, it came down to a couple priorities because big WA, man, that Rogue Idol, and you juice him up and he comes and smashes you. Like so many things could have went either way for sure.
It slaps.
Heavy, yeah. But like I said, it was the best game by far. So we exchanged numbers after. It was like he's super cool.
That's
guy.
Cute.
He's gonna super cute. I think he's gonna come down to Red Harvest, but it's just awesome playing those games with so tactical. Just one of those games you leave like after I was walking away, I was just wow, like holy shit, that was it takes a lot out of you, like the whole 3 hours of that type of stuff. So yeah, it was awesome game. So
nice.
Yeah, I mean, my game against him was same way, just like so mentally exhausting after. He's such a good player. So my third game I played against George. If any of you have been on TTS, he goes by Boggler. So I have a few laughs about that. Yeah, real gem of a human being. He was wearing his jerseys all day. It was also the day of the Euro final, and England was in the final.
Yeah, we don't have to talk about. We don't have to talk about that.
We don't have to talk about that. But he was in good spirits. And then even talking about the community and how great it was during the middle of Bogler and my game, or sorry, George and Mai's game. One of the guys, I don't know what happened in his match, but must have rolled something epic, and he was just screaming and running around like pretending he was riding a horse. And in some other contexts, it may seem like in your face and like a bit too crazy, but it was just like the perfect like positive energy of just like people playing in a tournament. It was really fun. Anyway, so into the game, George had a big wild list, was running 2 units of 6 pigs, a unit of 30 of the Savage George with spears, and then a unit of 5 brutes and a unit of 10 ardboys, or 2 units of 10 ardboys. So he took first, and I had my bow snakes and castle on one objective, and Marathi Shadow Queen on the other objective. And he took first. He charged the pigs in on my left flank and was able to kind of get in, but wasn't able to get. I had Marathi and a unit of witches there. He got to the witches, but wasn't able to. Or no, sorry, I had a unit of K-Knight Shadow Stalkers screen around Marathi. He killed all the K-Knight Shadow Stalkers, but wasn't able to get any of the pigs onto the objective because of how I placed the K-Knight Shadow Stalkers, which set up Marathi for the counter charge at the bottom of turn 1 on that flank. On the other flank, he buffed up a bunch of a unit of 10 Ardboys with his War Chanta to do 2 damage, then teleported them with Hand of Gork behind my lines to charge in to kill my Hag on the Cauldron, which was actually a really great play by him. Unfortunately, he made the charge and got in. They get the +1 to charge from his wall points, but he would have tied up. He did tie up my bow snakes and all my characters and my unit of Kunarai, so they couldn't charge and do the extra damage. Like, it was the perfect play, but he totally whiffed on damage. Like, he should have killed my Hag on Cauldron or done a lot of damage to the snakes. Like, but he didn't roll super hot on that. So in my next turn in the hero phase, I was able to shoot them off with the bow snakes, and so didn't end up taking a ton of damage there.
Seems to be a common trend. I was able to hero phase shoot him off with bow snakes.
I just happen to have that extra whole phase of shooting
that
other armies don't have. So between his pigs getting countercharged then at the bottom of turn 1 with Shadow Queen, and then that unit, he was up on me on points because he had taken the middle objective, but I was still getting that extra bonus point for Marathi being a hero on the objectives, and Marathi hadn't taken any damage. So he won the priority into turn 2, but I had Shadow Stalker screening out my big castle, and he just wasn't able to have enough maneuverability with the big wall list to like kind of get into that whole castle. So that's the thing about that list, is if you can't find a way to pick off either the 2 characters to make this bow snakes more vulnerable, or just get into the bow snakes hard and just do a ton of damage to them, eventually at some point in the game they will be able to double hero phase shoot on a big thing, and that's what happened. So that was kind of a common theme there.
And it doesn't have to be like a lot of people look at the turn 1, but having to just move them up in a central position and have them cover such a wide range is enough. You don't have to always be double shooting to impact the game. You just take a central position.
I didn't even need to move them really that whole game, because the way that their threat range was on that one flank is that I could keep my right objective, and then the middle objective, which was worth 2 points, I had full coverage to rain onto that one, as well as the one on the right flank. So I didn't even need to move to be clearing off and causing a lot of damage. Where it gets harder is the ones where I'm spread out a bit more, which we'll kind of talk about in game 5, which is a good one. Jordan will get to that one.
I guess I'll go with my game 5, and then yeah. So game 5 was Places of Arcane Power. Like I said in the beginning of our stream, it's one of the battle plans that I identified that I was gonna struggle in, and I was playing Jocelyn Cloutier, who was playing a shoot cast with all the stacking battalions, one drop, plenty of heroes, raptors that had 2 attacks apiece, and anvils, so they shot
Yeah.
twice. So incredibly scary. My heroes were 5 wounds, and my engine master was 8 wounds. But he was incredibly scared of my shooting as well, because he had, 5 heroes, but they were all relatively small as well, within the 5 wound, 6 wound range. And so he ended up giving me first turn. He was smart enough to put all his heroes except for one in the sky or in deep strike reserve, and so there wasn't really much targets for my army to shoot at. So what I ended up doing was, with the gun haulers and my Arcanaut units running, I tried to screen as much of the board as possible so he wouldn't be able to deep strike his heroes straight into the point. And I was able to, with the Barracks Zilfin deep strike, move my engine master into the middle point. There was a large building that was covering 2 sides of it, so he could only shoot that hero on the other L-shaped side of it. But I have to do a little bit of a better job at slowing down and measuring my ranges too well, because I screened out actually the top end where the building was, but it didn't fully screen out the bottom end where it was open, where he could shoot my hero. And so I ended up killing his heroes, ended up killing most of the units that were on the board. And Jocelyn, on his first turn, to his credit, deep struck in like a very, very tiny edge of the board. He wasn't able to shoot the hero, but it was much closer than what I anticipated. And so again, the theme of KO is the priority from turn 1 to turn 2. It was able to double me, was able to take down the Ironclad with the amount of shooting from his Raptors. I had made a mistake as well. I should have not loaded my heroes. It's kind of like the typical setup for KO is load your heroes onto the big boat and have it fly around and stuff. I had the ability to load it onto a smaller boat. I should have loaded that boat with at least one hero, so all my heroes are spread out. So when the Ironclad exploded, it was so far from any of the other objectives that I couldn't get any other heroes to those scoring positions except for my one engine master and balloon. And he didn't kill him in turn 2, but when turn 3 rolled around, I won priority, scored, so I scored 6 points. He was able to shoot him off. His small heroes dropped and were flying around, zipping, trying to get charges off to get onto objectives. He was able to get some of his smaller heroes onto objectives, and he ended up scoring 7 points to my 6 points. And so that was kind of a lesson for me in terms of slowing down. We were done our game in an hour. I mean, my longest game was probably an hour and a half out of the 2 hours and 45. And as a tournament takeaway for myself, it's not only just the army that plays fast. I play fast as well. But just to slow down and check my ranges and make sure that my game plan is correct. Like I formulate game plans pretty quickly, but just executing it to a tighter degree.
Making sure, just your ranges and everything are tight.
Correct. Because I don't know why I was zoning out the side that had the L-shaped building covering it. Because if he dropped over there, it was in no man's land, and he wouldn't have been able to affect any of the board. But instead, I zoned out that side and the rest of the board, kind of stretching myself thin. So it ended up with 15-5 actually. So still pretty good points in terms of a losing affair. So yeah.
Nice.
And Jocelyn went on to finish like top 4 or something.
Correct. Yeah, Joss
very
played incredibly well. Yeah.
And a very well painted army too.
Yeah, he had a converted like Space Wolves / Stormcast Eternals mix.
Oh, nice. Sweet. Well, Game 5 was a big one for us. This was the only inter-team matchup that we had. So going into pairings, after round 4, Oliver and I again being in the same room. Actually, also worth noting, your score from the first day, besides the room it puts you in, doesn't at all affect your pairings. So for day 2, it just resets. So you just from 0, literally like ran as a separate event, and then it would combine your day 1 scores with your day 2 scores at the end. But with Oliver and I being in the same room, and with such, I think we were both 19-1, or you were 20-0.
Yeah, we're both 19-1.
Yeah.
Or no, I was 20-0.
Yeah. So you were 20-0 and I was 19-1 in our first game. So we ended up getting matched up game 2. So it was Daughters of Cain again for me, the second time in a row. But we have played a number of games between us, and always been really, really good games and really tough games. And this one, again, on Place of Arcane Power, was a mission I don't want to play Doc on, especially with Marathi. And, everyone knows you just move on to an objective with one or both of them potentially, and you can hold those objectives for a good chance for 3 turns. And if you hold them for 3 turns in store and your opponent only holds them for 2, you're going to win, all things being equal otherwise. So my plan going into the game was, similarly to last one, take first turn, shoot some wounds off Marathi, take central board position, sit on my 2 objectives and kind of just be defensive. Again, I have, you can't shoot directly at my heroes. I have the Cloud of Midnight on the Eidolon, who I was going to throw on the center objective, and Volti on the other one, where, and I felt like I could just keep putting screens in front for your shooting hunter or your shooting snakes, and then counterattack and get into you with all my damage output that can kind of run off on its own. So that was the game plan. And then having that decision, I think, Oliver, you went to the washroom and I had like a minute to think about the turn, and I had that horrible moment of indecision. And just thinking about the output of the snakes, it's like, oh, okay, if he doubles me 1 into 2, that's 4 rounds of shooting with the bow snakes. That could potentially, clear all my screens and let him be charging into, my hero on turn 2. So it's like, I questioned my original strategy and ended up last minute switching and giving Oliver first turn, and immediately regretted it. Oliver, move Marathi to the center objective turn 1. I get to say everything up front, and then you get to get the final say afterwards. But
yeah.
It's great to see the different perspectives. But so for me, Oliver, you teleported, or you ran Marathi to the 1 center objective, the Shadow Queen, and then you had Marathi and your 2 cauldrons up on the top objective. You teleported the 2 cauldrons, which was an awesome play. Now, they didn't tag the objective that turn, but it just moved your power over there so strongly, which is an amazing play, and a play I wasn't expecting. And so as soon as you did that, and I was like, okay, as soon as I, during Oliver's turn, I'm like, okay, did the math while you were moving. I'm like, if he holds those 2 objectives, or the 1 objective till round 5, and Marathi holds this till round 3, and I don't score at round 3, even if I kill Marathi top of 4 and take it for 4 and 5, just doing the math, Oliver would win by 1 or 2 points, I think it was. So I immediately realized, again, having given away the turn was the mistake, because it put me in a really bad position of having to kill Marathi, and I already lost Oliver's turn 1 of not getting any damage on her. Whereas if, again, I got those 3 wounds, you would have been charging me. That's 6 damage turn 1. I could have had her down bottom of round 2. So basically, I had to keep throwing multiple units into Marathi to hope that something survived, so that he was still in combat on his turn and couldn't retreat off the objective, so I could get something doing damage to it in combat. But between the bow snakes double firing, Oliver, you made a great play with the snake and this spell to slay 2 of my 3 eels that were in combat with her. So I had that top of turn 2, I didn't get 3 wounds on her on your turn. So I was going into my turn where it's like, my best hope is she dies bottom of 3. But I have to not only set that up to, make sure she dies, which means I have to leave stuff in combat. I have to so I can't just shoot those wounds off. I have to charge, get the damage off, take hits back. So I have to have multiple things to for redundancy. So multiple, if you kill one thing, the other one's going to survive. So I really kind of put myself in this mess. And between the endless spell and the shooting, you were just chewing through a bunch of my army. But for me, the turning point was round 3. I won priority, which let me, buff up stuff. But because Volturnos was on one objective, I had 2 units of 3 Morsar, just in range for his buff. But again, you did a great play piling Marathi around into one of the units the previous turn, so it only had 1 model left. And then start of turn, because they took priority, you put the snake into the other unit, so it only had 1 model left. So I had 2 single eels to buff and buff them each with 2 attacks. But basically,
with only 1 or 2 wounds left on each model,
yes,
or something as well.
They each had 2, I think. And you had also thrown your Canary into my Eidolon the previous turn, where they didn't do any damage, but it forced me to use my Cloud of Midnight, so I couldn't even throw the Eidolon in, use Cloud of Midnight just to make sure he survives, and then can do the damage the next turn, because I would still be attacking first. So I could, that was a play that you took away from me by charging my Eidolon with those guys. So it was just kind of really scraping the bottom of the barrel. And at that point, okay, I threw the Eidolon and the turtle into Marathi. I had, the sharks clear out the sharks and something else, clear out the Canary, and then set up to go in round 3. Yeah, in round 3, I sent the sharks up to your home objective, or it is your back one, where you had the 2 cauldrons, because I had to interrupt you at this point. So they didn't know if I was going to, how turn 2 was going to work out, or turn 3, if I was going to stop you from scoring that objective and store it myself on turn 3, which I took first, so I knew I wasn't storing it. So I had to make sure you weren't storing it, so that, why the Eidolon and Turtle were there with Marathi, so they could kill her on your turn. But again, I had to start, fighting you off your own objective. So I had 2 sharks going up there, and did some wounds to that cauldron. And then I sent the 2 single Morsar guard and a single shark to your unit of stalkers, the shooty snakes, just because I had to deal with them at some point. Otherwise, you're just again shooting my hammers now, where I need to again be killing your stuff, getting you off your objective. And through a pretty fortuitous turn of rolling, you had a screen in front of your stalkers that was perfectly spaced to not fit any eels. But I got 1 eel with a long charge around one side. I had the shark around the other side of the screen, both into the snakes. And then right in the middle of your screen, you had 1 model that was an inch further than the rest, and perfectly sized for that second Morsar guard, which
he needed to roll a 12-inch charge.
I was going to say, I rolled a 12, and that play of getting into that unit was only there because I rolled a 12. An 11 or less, I wasn't even considering jumping that screen, but having a 12 and just looking at my options, I realized that 1 space was there for 1 eel to fit in. Couldn't have done it if I had the full unit of 3. But anyway, so again, got some wounds on the cauldrons with the other guys, and then so the 2 single Morsar buffed with 2 attacks each, and the shark killed 7 of your stalkers attacking first, and you didn't have. This was the first turn you didn't have Witch Brew on them, so they weren't immune to Battle Shock. So you were losing D6. You had 7 models left. You were losing D6 plus 1, and you rolled the 6.
D6 plus 1.
You rolled the 6, so I killed half the unit. The other half of the unit fled. So at that point, I think I was okay, because I had them tied up with a couple units where I felt, I still would have been okay in the game, but for just that huge hammer to be gone was just a huge weight off my shoulders, so to speak, in terms of not having to worry about them. And then I'm tied up with your cauldron. in combat, attacking first the next round in a position where, again, it can't retreat without, moving off the objective and me disrupting the order of you scoring anyways. So just one of those, like, I'm in the worst spot, I felt like, and just got, a couple things went my way with making those, long charges, getting some wounds on, and again, Marathi at the end of my turn had only 3 wounds left, so if she stayed in combat, you would have, she would have died on my turn. I again going so in deep in
I
this
had
one.
to get her out of there.
Yeah, you ended up retreating her bottom of 3 to keep her alive and actually set up. If you had gotten the double, she could have charged into Volturnos, potentially killed Volturnos, interrupted my home objective, and who knows what the scoring and math would have been like there, especially if you had a 1 priority. But I did win that turn for priority, so shot the last 3 wounds off. I think actually the turtle went into Little Marathi to finish the Shadow Queen and her off. My shark or whatever, or my turtle was also able to shoot the last single wound off of the cauldron that was holding your objective. So just like, it was one of those skin in my teeth, a couple things, both turn 3 and 4 priority went my way to make it all possible. But just one of those like closest games. I think it ended up being a 14-6, so very close in terms of scoring, and the points we came out of there with. But we knew, we were both, knew it was going to be an intense game. But we were excited because, either way we knew for the team it was putting really one or both of us, in a great position, and we were, happy either way. And again, we've played so many intense games that we knew we'd have a good one and a fun time. So that was in deep report there, but it was like such a close game. And Ridge, like you said after your last one, it was a game that just took so much out of you, and that's how I felt, at least. So like, and that was game 5.
I was mentally dead. I was mentally dead. I wasn't ready for the 6th game after that.
So, and so I was like that was a 5-game event. That's what you expect out of your game 5. With 2 top armies that have been doing well throughout the event, and so that
top
was like
table too, because you're on 4-0, so that's
and we were like top, literally we we're at time, we hit time, we like just quickly like it had been decided, but we just talked out scoring for the last round or 2. I think just the last round, but it went to time, so it's like we were immediately just carrying our stuff to the next table and getting right into it. So that was intense, but a great game. Definitely one I will not forget. And I notoriously lose so many priorities. I think in my first 4 games, I had won 1 priority in my first 4 games, but I won 2 in our game. And they were 2 pivotal ones. So I
got them when they counted.
I can't complain.
Yeah.
So and the other one I won was turn 3 in the Deepkin Mirror, so that was another pivotal one. So I didn't win many, but I won some important ones in those in those 5 games. But anyways,
that's what you need.
Yep. So
Oliver, do you have any?
Yeah, you can jump right into.
I mean, Jordan did great recap. I've played Jordan with his Deepkin with my daughters a number of times, so Jordan gets to hold that nice trophy of undefeated with Deepkin versus daughters in 2.0. We'll see if 3.0 we can shake that up. But yeah, it's probably the best game of Warhammer I've ever played. Like from being at a good position up front, like then Jordan was able to like play a kind of a perfect game after that. And a few things going his way, but like I wouldn't say it was like incredibly lucky. It was just well played and well positioned to claw it all back. Endless Spell was huge. That's kind of why you take it. Yeah. Magic Dominance was really strong for me. And I mean, in retrospect, the only thing maybe I would have done different is either there was 2 characters that were on the one side objective, and Jordan pointed out too. One of them was on the side. I thought I kind of had a chance to maybe screen it out, but in retrospect, it was way too hard to even kind of block that. I should have just chosen the other character to be the one that held the objective. And then Jordan would have been able to get it to it as easily. And that would have been helpful there too. Or I could have teleported small Marathi onto one of the objectives to start because then both Marathis can't die. The challenge with that other strategy, if you're doing like a Places of Arcane Power or something similar, is then you remove the buff piece, which is the Shadow Queen's, the Marathi Cane is just such an important buff to allow the snakes to double tap. If you do that, then you've immediately handicapped yourself from being able to get the benefits of all of her buff abilities.
Yeah.
So yeah, perfect, great game. And I was so mentally dead going into my final life as a result of that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so my game 5 was against Marc-Andre Haro. He was playing Slanesh, so it was cool to see Slanesh at the tournament with all of these KO and Zinch Archeon and Change Host and all the filth. He was running all of the Bliss Barbs and the Hellstriders, like the Cav. And then he had I think it's the Battalion that lets them all do the 6-inch Merlin. So something that one of those lists that you kind of got to be scared of because you don't see it. So it's like I didn't really know what to expect. I've never played against it, but yeah. So he outdropped me. He gave me first. So his only 3 heroes were he had Glutos, and then he had the what's the chick that has the long shot with the big harp, Infernal Enraptress. Yeah. And then he had one of the chariots with a hero on it. So he gave me first. I just immediately just kill. If I can kill those heroes, then he's not going to score. That's obviously what the whole point of the match is. So I was able to move up Croak, move my guard up, take the middle point, and then I ran up my Star Priest on the top right point, and then moved a bunch of skinks over there and screened that out. And then I summoned another 10 skinks around Croak, so he had a double ink screen, classic Seraphon tech. And then I actually teleported the Salamanders, killed the chariot, and then I was able to shoot off I dropped the camos and shot off the Enchantress. So Plutos was the only thing alive. And then in his turn, it's cool because he can avoid parting shot, right? Having a 6-inch spell, and I didn't kind of click in, but he was moving it, running everything else, and piling in. But he just wasn't able to do enough damage. He killed my front screen, I think, and then he won turn 2 priority. And then killed my other screen. Either way, Croak survived, and the Star Priest barely survived. And then in my turn, I was able to kill Glutos. So it was one of those ones where he then, after that, was able to kill the Star Priest and minimize the amount that I could score. So I only scored, I think, 1, 2, and then 3, 4, 5, 6. So I was up 6-0 in points. And then I think after that, I don't know if I was able to get I was able to kill my other heroes. So I wasn't able to score in turn 4 and turn 5 that you get max point. So it ended up being, I think, a 15-5 or one of the closer ones. But yeah, he was a super, super nice guy. And we had obviously a great chat, like all the other rest of my games. But we, like I said, it was just cool playing Slanesh, and he was having fun with a bunch of the cool Cav models that they have, and just running a list like that at some of these tournaments is cool, respectable. So yeah, it was fun.
Nice. So
yeah, so that was end of the game 5. So we were all going into our game 6.
Yeah. So I'll start off with game 6. So going into this, I was 2-1-2. And I wanted to cap off at least at a positive note to the tournament. So I played a gentleman named Simon Cote, who was my favorite opponent to play.
Oh, yeah.
In
Simon.
Yeah, Simon.
He's awesome.
He played a Slaves to Darkness Ravagers list that was Nurgle marked, and I played Touch Warband, a big block of 15 Chaos Warriors, a whole bunch of Chaos Marauders, Be'lakor. So he ended up being a lower drop than me with the Plague Touch Warband. He went first. Sorry, we were playing Blade's Edge. So you guys know with Blade's Edge, if you take first and capture all 6 objectives, if you have a resilient tanky army, it's incredibly difficult to peel you off of those objectives, and your opponent is playing on the back foot. And so he did just that. Strung out his Chaos Warriors to capture 2 points, Be'lakor on one side, Chaos Lord on Kardrak right in the middle with Sorcerer Lords. So he took all 6. So I was already in the back foot. And here's one of the matchups again where the Warp Lightning Vortex would have did me quite a bit of good. Because his Nurgle mark in Slaves to the Darkness means everything is -1 to hit within normally a 12-inch bubble, but he took a command trait to make it an 18-inch bubble. So basically everything in his army was -1 to hit. Incredibly resilient with the reroll saves from the Sorcerer Lords. The Chaos Warriors do that, natively.
Yeah.
The Warshrine gives +1 save. And so I was back up against it. Kept pushing through, was able to start to wear down some of his units. But he was playing Ravagers, which is not one that is seen as often in the competitive scene. I would say not like the Spoilers or Knights of the Empty Throne in Slaves to Darkness, but it allows him to summon 10 Marauders on a board edge, and because of how Blade's Edge is, he's able to charge those Marauders, and since the lowest die becomes a 6, it's incredibly easy for you to make those 9-inch chargers. And so he kept tagging my 10 Arcanauts with 10 Marauders and would kill one, and on my fight back I would do no damage because Arcanauts don't really do very much in combat, and so he would take objectives here and take objectives there. It was still an incredibly close game. We kept laughing the whole time, and it was a great time. So I ended up losing my last game to go 15-5. So he didn't, beat the brakes off of me. But because of how differential worked, I still clawed and scored some points.
Yeah.
But yeah, those 10 Marauders just charging in were super annoying. Just like
amazing, man.
The whole time, just charging in here and charging there and just locking.
Such a great unit.
Yeah, it's gonna be a thing still. Just always,
yeah.
And I could 30s, but still.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, my game sitch. So at this point, was 5-0. So I knew I was either finally getting to play a KO player. There's a Seraphon. Another Flamer Zinch, or the only list I didn't want to play, which was a Zinch Archeon. And I played the Zinch Archeon.
Of course.
Yeah, that's how it goes. So again, like we said, just running over from a game with Oliver. The reason I was not wanting to play this army, Zinch Archeon, I'm fine with Archeon. I can deal with Archeon. Again, unrendable eels, tie him up all day. I'm rerolling all wounds against monsters. I can, turn 3, attack first with everything. I can deal with Archeon. What I can't deal with is the mortal wounds. So, again, coming off last game, I think the only mistake I made in the game, I think, was taking first turn. Or not taking first. I did take first turn. Get on, 5 of the 6 objectives and kind of reposition. I should have deployed more neutrally. I didn't feel after with his pregame move, I didn't feel like I was in a position to comfortably give away the turn, though that's what I should have positioned where I could have gone either way. So I kind of deployed and forced myself into taking first, which in hindsight was the bad play. I tried to capitalize on scoring lots of points, but it also meant with spell portal and the ranges of the spells and that kind of thing, he was he did 20 mortal wounds to a couple of my units turn 1.
You have no unbind either, at all.
I have no spell casting, exactly.
Archeon with no plus, still getting off his spells.
So doing Mystic Shield and rerolling saves on Archeon and able to clear my 2 screens with or some of my screens with all the mortal wounds, and then
did he have Geminids, Demon Rift, all the
no Geminids, I don't think, or he didn't cast them, but Demon Rift, which did 8-9 mortal wounds turn 1 alone.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, and then
and you have no caster, so that's all his casters around the spells.
Yeah, exactly. and then the flat 6, and so that was just like so painful. Turn 1, it's like like 14, 15 mortal wounds at least, clearing 1 unit of Ishlayan, and then like the next turn he killed 2 units of Morsar and a unit of sharks. I think it was just 1 single shark. So that's 500 points of my army just in casting within the spells.
Magic Immortals is what
exactly.
Like
so, but I could have given away first turn, denied a turn of that potential damage, but he's super well played. So the guy, his name was Matthew, super well played. Made no real mistakes or anything. He did that turn 1. He ended up putting Archeon because my greens got cleared in casting. He got Archeon into the turtle, which is fine. I did all out defense. Turtle should take 8 wounds at 6 to 8 wounds. All my 4-ups rerolling 1s, I failed them all. So I took 12 damage off the top, and then with the fate dice, he ensured he got the rest of the damage, and used Kairos's change of die to make sure I didn't make an armor save. So he killed my turtle, to the wound turn 1. So it's like, again, immediately back foot, but not expecting the mortal output to clear my screens. Obviously, my own mistake in hindsight, and again, I think should have given away the turn. But that was a painful one, especially no, not an excuse by any means, but dead after the last game. But not the most exciting way to end this 6 days. I would have been happy to finish it at 5 games.
6-0, yeah, man. There's a reason that list terrorized TTS 2020. Like it won a lot. Like Steven Follows, like there's Casper, like a lot of those guys that were playing Siege Archeon and Kingdom. It's very, very strong list.
And to be fair, when the game was called, so at the end of the when time was called, I was only 2 points down on the scoreboard, but he had me in kill points, he had me in whatever else, but I was still able to dance around and do everything I could. I was even trying to kill Archeon just because the secondaries were pre-chosen for each round, so I had to assassinate, and he obviously chose Archeon, so that was impossible to get. Based on how the game went, so that was a painful game 6. But again,
you held him back in points from getting top table. For first overall.
Yeah, well, he had actually lost a game day 1 or day 2 at some point, so he was the guy I was playing. So he was 4-1, so he ended 5-1. I ended 5-1. So I think there was the potential of up to 3 or 4 people to be undefeated, but that's 1 less, so I think only maybe 2 or 3 ended up being undefeated throughout the event.
There was so much points though, anyways. Like it didn't even matter.
Yeah, and it was still
I finished 5-1, and I was 11th or something, I think, with tournament points. Yeah. But it's way more getting those points.
So still a 14-6 for me, just for the game being close on the main score at least. So decent points for a loss. Painful one.
Yeah, for sure, man. My last game was awesome. I played Yann Lacour, so he was good friends, and I think he's in the club with Alex Thibodeau, like the TO of the whole tournament. So huge shout out to them. He was absolutely awesome. Gave me a pack of dice before we played, so that was great. We had a beer together and chatted. He was playing Doc, so he's playing a similar list to what Oliver plays. And I've played Doc a bunch, and I obviously understand how everything works with it. Blade's Edge. He was in the predicament, like always, that either he goes first and then possibly gets double turned back, or he gives me first, and then I'm able to do enough damage and score 5 or 6 points with Blade's Edge. So it's a huge decision right off the bat, especially with having the camos too in reserve, so they're dropping down. It's tough. But anyways, he ended up taking first, moved up, scored. I then hit back, dropped my camos in the back, dropped all my skinks kind of in front, and took out. I just wanted to kill as many bow snakes as I could because they're just insane. So I think I killed, I killed, I think, 5 or 6 with the skinks, and then 2 or 3 with the camos, or something like that. And then I was in a position where I was okay with Merathi charging me, because I did the 3 wounds to her. And then if she charges me, then I can actually get the 3 wounds in her phase, which is the key. Like, if you are only doing damage to Merathi in your own turn, that's where she's going to survive. So, yeah, I was just able to take it. So his list was, he had 2 cauldrons, 2 units of 20 witches, Merathi, 15 bow snakes, and 10 sisters of slaughter. So yeah, he kind of just put 20 and 20 on either side, Merathi and the bow snakes down in the middle. But yeah, I just was able to position really well, like with my skinks, and then I was able to keep everything alive. I moved up the salamanders, killed the 20 block on my right, and then the skinks shot off the bow snakes, or enough of them, and then just mitigated how much damage he could do back to me. So then by turn 2 and then into turn 3, I still had my 3 salamanders, had my 20 whatever skinks left, and then I was able to just kind of eventually whittle them down, kill Merathi, take the 2 points in the middle. Yeah, and then it was game. So it was it's like I said, it's a tough decision. Either you go first or you let them go first, and then he could have possibly doubled me, which could have been, a little bit different. But game 6, even those decisions kind of, I don't know. I usually would go for it, but it depends. I don't know. It's tough to say, but it was great to be able to play like such a good dude to finish out the tournament. So yeah, finished 5-1. Felt it was like dirty Seraphon. So it's like the Zinch Archeon, Seraphon. There's so many of these that are just like so strong, and there's a reason why Zinch and Seraphon went up in so many points into 3.0. And but yeah, was good finish to the tourney. It was fun. It's awesome.
Yeah, so to round it out here, played Kevin in my final game. Kevin was playing Net Deepkin again. So that was my second Net Deepkin back to back. Kevin had some cool list tech. He had the new Sylvaneth character. I forget the name.
The Warsong Revenant.
Warsong Revenant, and had that with a I think also a branch wraith to summon in dryads, and the Balewind Vortex as well for the additional cast. So for a IDK list that typically, like we saw in Jordan's one, no magic, nothing to stop or shut down Merathi. Here, he did have that tech and was able to get a few kind of key unbinds, which was pretty cool. But while Kevin underdropped me, he decided to give away first, which I asked him about it, but I think he was again same kind of conundrum as Ridge just talked about. Do you let do you have 2 rounds in a row of bow snakes shooting you, even with IDK, with the mortal wound? The mortal wound output is just like so scary. So I scored I popped up my 2 units of Canon Shadowstalkers on his and scored all the objectives. So just got way up on points to begin with, and there wasn't too much that he could do to claw back as a result. So ended up taking out the win on that one and finished the tournament 4-2, which, given the good games and the opponents I came up against, was quite happy with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
that's it.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I was waiting for Carl Drove, but Carl already went.
No. So that was kind of our tournament. In terms of just talking about battle points for our team, we mentioned Patrick East, who Oliver played, had the most battle points at 101.
And just worth noting, right. This ranking was based on battle points, not win-loss.
Correct.
So battle points, again, more important than win-loss.
Correct.
Yeah.
Which did end up saving me, because I ended the tournament at 2, 1, and 3. So with Patrick as kind of the benchmark at 101, I was 25th with 66 battle points, which was pretty good, with a record of 2, 1, and 3.
Yeah. And still, with 100-player event, that's still the top quarter. Which is awesome.
I wanted to do. I had a little bit more expectation for myself, but I mean, I'm pretty happy with how I did, but yeah, wanted to push the top 10 at least. And I'll kind of go through everybody as we go on. Ridge submarining in his first game and then coming straight up right afterward. He ended up 11th with 83 battle points. Next up is both Oliver and Jordan, who actually tied in battle points. You guys were respectively 7th and 8th with 85 battle points. So it was all about battle points. Like Ridge, like we were saying before, Ridge was 5-1, but because of battle points, Oliver still broke the top 10.
Yes, sir. So yeah, no, obviously across the team,
And Jordan finished
third
I was just gonna
overall.
say that,
Yes.
third overall.
Yes.
Jordan Jordan finished up top 3 for when you factor in painting and presentation and everything,
And
which
sports.
you know what? And sports, I mean, it's big deal. So it's just so nice to. That's the thing you don't get in TTS, the holistic score. So
yeah.
And best order.
Yeah, and
we ended up taking best
Yeah.
order. Yeah.
Yeah.
So because Patrick East, who won, was Seraphon, but the next best order fell to me, with the overall score. So I, obviously happy to take that, and coming off such a disappointing end to my games,
It's a surprise.
going 5-1, that was unexpected actually, and really nice. So super. In the end, I mean, it was a great weekend. Otherwise, I definitely would have gotten over the loss.
Yeah.
But that was a nice way to finish it off, and across the board for the team, just a great result. Looking at just the team overall result, was amazing. For us, this was our first event. You've played a bunch on the same team, under X Planet, but this is the first event where we're all playing together under Season of War on a road trip, out of town. So
after pandemic, like it was just a great weekend.
Great weekend. The final send off to 2.0. So overall, just a great weekend. And I guess everyone, let's quick open forum thoughts on the weekend and overall about the event.
Sure. I'll kind of start off. I've been starting off for everybody. I kind of want to just talk about kind of my mindset in a tournament setting and what I want to accomplish and change for AOS 3 as opposed to AOS 2. I feel like I kind of stagnated in terms of how I played. I quickly improved in the beginning of 2.0 and kind of just felt like I was at the same level for most of 2.0. So in 3.0, what I want to do is it be a little bit more measured in how I do things. Yes, games will take longer. I want to pass the hour mark in my games at least. And I like took steps to that by buying a notebook, and I'm gonna track every single game I play, round by round, who goes first, what battle tactics I do, and so I can track really granularly how I'm doing, and if I can identify areas in games where a decision might go one way or another. So I'm gonna be taking notes and being a little bit more measured with how I play with the AOS 3. And in terms of the whole tournament weekend, that this was probably the most fun I had at any tournament. And I think out of the 8 of us, somebody asked one question. We had 8 poutines in the 4 days we were there. So
yeah. I got nachos one time.
Sorry, 7 poutines. 7 poutines. I forgot you guys shared the nachos the one time. So yes, I want to be a little bit more measured, track my growth, and if I feel like I'm stagnating, try to push past that ceiling and try to execute at a higher position. I think my strength as a player is all about we kind of touched based on it, is like my knowledge of the game and my knowledge of people's armies. I could just retain that information, but the execution on the table is not where I want it to be. And I could be happy with how I'm playing. Like top quarter in a 100% tournament is something to be proud of, definitely. But I'm a super, like all of us here are super competitive people, and I want to win. So I want to see where I can push myself in AOS.
Take that extra minute. You're always done so fast. Take that extra minute.
So
make
fast.
sure
Yeah.
you zone that out. Make
exactly.
sure. Very small thing.
Yeah.
Just to jump on that, a couple points. I know we talked a lot, obviously, 8-hour drive home, but even just after our games, we're reviewing and all that. We're always trying to improve together as a team and help each other improve individually. I know, Carl, one thing you were talking about wanting to get away from also was KO, or at least your build with them was very RNG dependent. So it was like, who wins turn 2 priority was such a determining factor.
Yep.
Opposite of Deep Kitten.
Opposite of exactly where I like try and mitigate all RNG opportunity, try and control everything, limit my opponent's options. Obviously, the army I'm playing really plays into that. And you can build any, to varying degrees, you can build an army one way or the other, obviously within limitations. But I know that's one thing you were saying, wanting to get away maybe from the RNG.
So I'll kind of touch like on that point. I was talking with Simon, which was my last opponent, and kind of his philosophy of the game of his army is always in there. He's not necessarily going to win big at any point, but he can claw and scrap like a grindy victory, and I kind of really resonated with that thought. KO is my favorite model range, and which is why I initially started playing them. But from a tournament standpoint, or like from a fun standpoint, from a tournament standpoint, I can definitely 5-0, 6-0 tournaments and win the whole thing. But am I really having fun when I blow someone out of the water in 15 minutes? I don't know. So I kind of have to reevaluate. 3.0 might unlock some things with KO in terms of redeploy and unleash hell, so I at least have some play in my opponent's turn, so I don't sit there when somebody doubles me and not have anything to do.
It'll be interesting for sure.
But it's an incredibly volatile army, and if you don't win that first turn priority, you're already on the back foot. Not saying that you can't scrap and win the game afterwards, but it's
can be very decisive.
Exactly, it's a very decisive moment.
And also, the notebook is a great point. I recommend everyone to do that. Actually, like Carl, I know you saw whenever you came over to watch me. I was every game I had was recording who was scoring what, how many CP people were at for every round, who won priority and chose, just for going back and review. And this is something actually started.
It's good for your recaps.
Yeah, exactly. And started doing for
I need to do that. I think I dropped at least 1 point from that, like not documenting things exactly.
Yeah,
but it's my own fault. So
Jordan, I see your strategy with it is like you put, especially you're smart when you play Tzeentch and stuff, you put all their fight dice in there.
Yep.
For you to keep track of yourself. So you're making sure, I mean, people do it on the board too, but like you remember it better if you write it down.
People make mistakes, and it's not even the point of like you think that someone is cheating or doing anything like that. It's just people make mistakes. Like we make mistakes. You make mistakes all the time. So it's like
a lot of people have dice, right? So you can knock it.
And it's to be playing Tony with his Tzeentch. Similarly, like again, it's just keeping track of the game, knowing what's up. He was like, "Oh, I'm at this many fate points." I'm like, "No, you actually have 2 more than you think you do," or like so it works both ways. Wanting to make sure everything's above board and we're all on the same page and everything. So and just having redundancy and in that information. And again, a dice can a table gets bumped, dice can get knocked over, and you're like, "Oh, was that a 4 or a 6?" It just it takes that takes any question and potential issues, helps reduce that, so you're all again on the same page and communication's open and clear, and there's no questions or anything.
Cool. Do you have anything other stuff to say, or do you want me to?
I guess the biggest point I would say, and I was saying it all weekend to everyone, that again the community out in Quebec was so impressive across the board. Not only like were all the people we met outside of the games awesome, you know, having dinner, just walking through the halls, all that. That was a blast. Such an awesome community, so many nice people. But like, we all had some intense games, one way or the other, winning and losing, and like people were awesome opponents, just like to a level across the board that I haven't experienced before. Of like, you're winning big, and somebody's like still happy, and it's like, in the game and motivated, engaging. They're not checking out. And if they're beating you big, they're not. I didn't experience anyone gloating or being disrespectful. Everyone was like,
no salt. There's like no saltiness.
It was awesome.
Like,
so
and some armies can do a lot of damage to you. You know what I mean? And then to not be salty and still be like smiling and talking.
A bit like that's what that army does. That's like they like when
understanding.
When people.
I agree. It's like very much like that.
So I definitely walked out of being like, I'm definitely coming back to Grand Clash next
100%.
year.
Yeah.
If there's any more
100%.
GTs in Quebec that are viable, definitely gonna look into those. Obviously the 1-dayers is tough for an 8-hour drive, but but GTs I would definitely love to go back there for. It was awesome. Great community across the board. Chatting with everyone. Huge shout out to Alex, the TO a buddy that I talked to for a couple of years. Ran an amazing event with the whole team that supporting him. So huge props to them. Awesome job. Awesome tournament. Look forward to going back.
Big time. Yeah, I just ditto everything you said completely about the meta there, the people there. Very much that. It was just awesome. I don't really have much, I don't know, about just in general. I guess I'm just torn in between playing Seraphon or Skaven for 3.0, so that's my only my thing. But either way, it was just great. It was awesome. It was just cool going out again and playing tournaments. Like, it's been a while since we've been able to go to a tournament and just talk about everything. And so excited for the next few months, and just kind of end of 2.0 was nice to be gone and start 3.0 new and whatever, play a bunch of tournaments.
Yep.
On that note, just to have this as a farewell to 2.0 was great. Was really great. Like, the FAQs and everything was out. We could have done 3.0 for this one. But I think a lot of people have put time into planning the armies. It definitely made sense to do it as 2.0, and it was like a great send off to the game that, like, 2.0 was great. I think 3.0 is going to be like just that much better. But yeah, it was a really good end to that version of the hobby.
Yep. And like a final send off to like so many abusive things that, like, after playing 3.0, you're like, this is so broken, and I'm so glad it's gone.
What do you mean, bound Geminid?
Yeah.
Just dispelling them and then casting them again. What do you mean? That wasn't.
No.
Zenchar
Kaon right now doesn't work.
Yeah, that's and we'd all expect that to be FAQ, but because of the keywords, Archaon technically can't go into any subfat or any of the chaos factions.
Yeah,
he's gonna be a menace. We'll see.
Oh, there's Ollie. Ollie just got
frozen.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But yeah, I think one quick thing, if you're still watching, or to those watching, I do want to mention, we've talked about it a couple times. Red Harvest is the next big GT on our schedule. So if you're in like the northeastern US even, or eastern Canada, or west, anywhere you want to come out, Red Harvest is in October. I'll throw a link in the description of this video after we finish the stream. It's got a Facebook event page, but Red Harvest in October, awesome GT planned by our buddy Josh. It's potentially gonna hopefully break the record for the new biggest AOS event in Canada. So he has the player limit is up to 128. So I know we have buddies from the West Coast that bought their tickets today. The guys from Quebec are coming that we met.
Close to the airport is a good shout out too.
Exactly. So
23rd and 24th.
Yeah. So it'll be another great event. really looking forward to that one, seeing a bunch of the guys we met out in Quebec coming down, and people from all over. Hopefully we get some Americans trying to test their luck north of the border.
Yeah, it'd be cool just seeing our guys too, like in
Oh yeah,
the guys we head and in Toronto, and people that we played in terms.
for sure.
Fun.
Yeah. Yep, so that'll be a blast. So if you're in the area or it's viable for you, definitely would love to see you guys there. We're not involved other than just friends of
Playing. We're playing.
Yeah, we're all playing. We don't want to
Oh.
run events. I mean, we want to run events, but we'd rather play in them.
100%.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll do one event where we don't play.
Yeah. Otherwise, though, I think that's pretty much a wrap. That was, again, our last 2.0 tournament. Thank you to everyone watching. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Again, still feel there's lots of takeaways and things to learn that we can apply to 3.0 from the event. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the insights a little bit. But I think that'll be a wrap. We can say goodnight to everyone. We've been talking long enough. So thanks for sticking around. Hope to see you guys soon in a new battle report.
Yeah, see you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Which is funny because KO.
Ending the stream.
Yeah. Cool. Oh, that was good, man.
You made the end, Oliver.